Good evening. Welcome to this series on the 7 factors of awakening. And now I'm at the second module, exploring the factor of investigation of reality, or we also call it investigation of the Dharma. And this follow on from the previous module where I went through the different aspects of mindfulness. So with mindful attention to what is happening in our own experience, we are well set to be able to inquire a bit deeper to some of our experiences, some of the happenings in our life, outside or inside. And therefore, it naturally leads to this factor of investigation of reality, investigation of the Dharma, investigation of our different experiences, and also our reaction to the different experiences. So last week, I started off by presenting a very simple meditation in which I think in that meditation, if I don't remember wrongly, I asked you to make a distinction between sensing, when our attention is sensing, operating through our physical senses, we are attending to what is happening here and now through our physical senses, through seeing, to hearing, and if they smell or taste, then to be in touch with that, to be in touch with bodily sensations, tangible, tactile sensations. And of course, also to be aware of what is happening in our own mind. So is the mind involved in thinking? So we are contrasting, just for the sake of the exercise and practice, between sensing and thinking. Now, there are different kinds of thinking, and I have oversimplified the situation. We may be thinking about something that is happening here and now, but then we also have a lot of thinking habits where we are thinking about things that are actually not present here and now. We are thinking about the past, thinking about the future, we're daydreaming, fantasizing, involving some alternate reality. We may be preoccupied with forming judgments and opinions. We might be holding a kind of internal conversation or dialogue with who knows, whoever you have in mind. So there are a great variety of thinking activities that we might be involved in. So, and it is also important for us to be mindful of our different thinking habits and to investigate to see what sort of impact this variety of different habits of ours, habits of thinking, habits whereby we preoccupy our attention with different kind of ideas and concepts. What sort of impact does it have on our own well-being, as well as on our behavior, which directly or indirectly affect others in our life as well. So there is the function of investigation, to not only pay attention, to pay closer attention, and also to notice more than just what is happening here and now, but also to become in touch with the kind of effects that come forth from all these different happenings at this moment. So I divide thinking roughly into two different categories. One category, I call it functional thinking, in the sense that these are thinking activities that really help us to get on with our life, to problem solve, to deal with the practical aspects of life, which is the marvelous ability of thinking that allow us to remember the past and for various purposes, most importantly, of course, to learn lessons from the past and to plan for the future, which is just as important for our survival, for our well-being. And also thinking can be in a very creative way, exploring various possible solutions to our problems, or just in an enjoyable way, to be creative. But then again, there are another category of thinking, which I call reactive thinking. These are thinking habits in which we are reacting to certain things, things that happen in our life, things that may have already happened, or maybe currently happening, or may actually never happen, but nonetheless we imagine them happening. And we are reacting to all these different scenarios and situations, not just in the form of thoughts, but also quite often accompanied by different feelings and emotions, and even our body may also react to it. Yeah, so these are reactive thinking. It's important not to view thinking as sort of like in a very generic way as thinking as not good or harmful, because especially when we are very stressed, our thinking take on a certain kind of quality, which can be quite distressing. Especially when come evening time, we want to have a rest, we want to chill out and to get ready to sleep. And when the mind is preoccupied with all this kind of thinking activities, especially a reactive way of thinking, to the extent that we might impact on our sleep, then we really resent this kind of thinking. We can, of course, correctly see that they compound the whole effect of stress. They are distressing us, but nonetheless, it's not. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing to get rid of all forms of thinking. In fact, I think that is a really bad idea, because thinking play a very important role in our survival, in our search for happiness, in helping us to deal with the various challenges in our life. But it's helpful to investigate and find out for ourselves which kind of thinking is truly helpful and beneficial, and which type of thinking is maybe not so helpful, and maybe could actually be distorting, could actually be aggravating the situation, making things worse for us and for others. And maybe that thinking involve distortion, false elements, false information, and are therefore overall actually quite harmful. So all those we need to figure out through investigating. We need to investigate. In fact, investigate our various different habits of thinking, to uncover for ourselves which are beneficial and we need to keep and encourage, and which are actually quite harmful. So before we go further into exploring, investigating particular thinking, I thought we can start off this class with meditation, sort of another variation to what I introduced last week. Last week I asked that we make a distinction. We try to notice when our attention is preoccupied with sensing and when our attention is preoccupied with thinking, and to label them accordingly. The labeling helps us to see them clearly for what they are. So it's a kind of a technique to enhance our ability to recognize that these different activities, mental activities, and also to help us inquire, to see clearly and inquire into what is actually happening. But today I thought we can also do a different kind of investigation. We can ask ourselves the question is, if we were to privilege sensing, we place the emphasis for our attention to be with sensing through, for example, through the ears, through listening, allowing and welcoming sound into our awareness, allowing and welcoming bodily sensations to come into awareness, breath sensations, which is a type of bodily or tactile sensation, to come into awareness, and to make ourselves available to sensing. Of course, occasionally we'll find our attention is drawn to thinking, which is not a problem, but we can invite our attention, say, come back to here and now, come back to sensing. So if we were to use our attention in that way, what kind of effect, what kind of impact it may have on our body, on the state of our body, on the state of our mind, and overall, what sort of effect it might have on ourselves. So this is one way of practicing investigation, primarily making use of the skill of mindfulness we have developed. For example, as I presented in the last module, as we have developed the skill of mindfulness, we can apply it in the context of investigation, and find out for ourselves. We don't have to believe in what others has to say. We simply apply the method and find out firsthand for ourselves in our own experience. What might be the benefits or disadvantages if attention is very much caught up in thinking, to the extent that we almost block out all forms of sensing. The mind, the attention is really lost in thought, so to speak, as the expression goes. What sort of impact does it have on us? Is it good? Is it not good? And likewise, if attention is able to not so much lock in, but feel comfortable enough to just rest in this moment, rest with our senses, keeping our senses open and be present to whatever is coming through our senses, be it sounds or tactile sensations of different types. And usually I have my meditation, I have my eyes closed, so there's no sight coming in. And since I'm not burning incense, there's usually very little, no scent. And also I'm not eating anything, there's no taste. So 3 of the 5 physical senses are not so active, but mainly listening and sensing through the body. And if my attention is to rest with these 2 senses and to be comfortable and happy to just be here and now, attending to these different happenings coming through our senses, how does it impact my body? How does it impact my mind? Am I able to notice the effect? So that is, I thought we can do this investigation and find out for ourselves, and we might learn something from this. Right, so let's do a meditation together on sensing mainly. So let's place our body in a suitable meditation posture, one that you feel is comfortable and supportive for your body in meditation. You can sit on a chair, sit cross-legged on the floor. I'm combining 2 of them and sitting cross-legged on the chair. We can also lie down in the privacy of wherever you are. You can lie down on your back in a supine position. So take a few moments and just adjust the body accordingly to find a comfortable posture for yourself. So adjust the body, or allow the body to adjust itself, finding a suitable position, especially for the back or spine. Make sure that the back or spine is in a comfortable position, natural position, upright if you are sitting, straight if you are lying down. Just make sure that the posture does not introduce additional pain or discomfort into any part of the spine, the back, especially the more vulnerable areas of the lower back and the neck. Usually I ask people to place their hands or arms on some kind of physical support so that we don't have to tense up the shoulder muscles or arm muscles during the meditation, to hold up the hands and arms in some special ways. And feel free to close the eyes completely if you find that helpful, or you're more familiar with leaving your eyes open or half open, then that is also perfectly fine. First, we want to reassure our body that it is well supported in this posture, that there really is no need for the body to be so tight, so tense, so contracted. To do so, we become aware of the sensations coming through, the points of contact between body and seat, body and ground. Welcome into our awareness sensations of solidity, of firmness, of stability, maybe of hardness or softness. We want to allow the body to feel that it is resting well supported on the great earth via our seat, and the whole body in this posture is balanced and safe. This will persuade the body in its own time to unwind, to loosen up a bit, to gradually let go of some of those unnecessary tightenings and contractions. And when it does that, the body will be able to settle down and be more and more comfortable in the posture. So next is to help body and mind to shift gears, to settle into meditation. In this case, the meditation on sensing, inviting our attention to come back, to be in touch with our physical senses, to welcome the happenings that's coming through via the physical senses, primarily through the ears and through the body. So let's start with listening. As we set our body into posture, as we quiet down just a bit in our own mind, see if we can open the sense of hearing and listening and become aware of the sounds in the surrounding. Allow the sounds in your surrounding, be it sound on the outside or sound produced by our own body. Allow the sound reverberating in space to somehow enter and appear within our listening awareness. See if we can appreciate both the presence of the sound and also the presence of space within which the sound can appear, can reverberate. Without the need to judge the sound as good or bad, to label the sound as this or that. Simply be present here and be aware and welcome all the different sounds into our awareness. And see if we can bring the same mode of attention and awareness of listening into the other sense, the sense of the body, as if we are able also to listen and tune in to what the body has to say in the form of tensing, relaxing, tightening, loosening, in the form of changing tactile sensations. So coming back here and now, stay open to the sounds in our surrounding without any effort, without straining or striving. Simply settle back, quiet down, and just be open and receptive to the sounds. And along the way, we can also welcome in the different sensations in the different parts of our body, almost as if we can tune in and listen not only to the sounds, but also to the sensations of our own body. What sort of sensations may arise or may be present at the crown of our head in this very moment? A bit of tingling sensations, itching sensations, a slight feeling of pressure, a sense of coolness or warmth, or maybe nothing at all at the crown of our head. How about our face? What sort of sensations will come into our awareness alongside the sounds and other feelings and sensations? How may our face appear to our body sense? Do we notice any tension in any part of our face? Are we tightening any particular facial muscles? Resting attention here and now, inviting our attention to come back here and now. If we do find ourselves distracted by certain thoughts, and that is perfectly fine, perfectly normal. Coming back to the face, is it possible for us to consciously and gently relax some of those muscles of the face and to welcome into our awareness a different set of feeling, a feeling of softening, of softness, of ease and comfort at our face. Coming back to sensing, to listening, keeping our attention present here and now. How about sensations at the throat, at the neck, at the shoulders? Tune in and notice what might be happening in this part of the body. Neck and shoulders are common areas within us where we store quite a bit of tension and tightness, that is for some of us. So if we do notice uncomfortable feelings of tightness and tensions that do not go away easily, see if we can just acknowledge them as such. Acknowledge those unpleasant feelings, those tensions, and just let them be for the moment. Continue with sensing, resting our attention here and now. What sort of sensations may arise and we may notice in both of our arms? Are we able to detect subtle sensations at the upper arms, at the elbows, the forearms? Probably very simple, mundane sensations, nothing spectacular, nothing weird or unusual. But nonetheless, see if we can welcome those sensations into our awareness. How about sensations at both hands? Sensations at the palm of the hands, sensations at the back of the hands, as well as sensations in our fingers, all the way to the fingertips. Coming back to sensing, now that we have somehow awakened the sensations in the arms and hands, see if we can give permission and gently rest the weight of both arms and hands comfortably on their physical support. And now, how about sensations at our chest? What sort of sensations may appear in our awareness as we continue this investigation into sensing? Are we able to notice the movements associated with breathing at the chest? Are we able to sense the beating of our own hearts here? And what kind of sensations we may notice, not just at the front of the body, at the chest, but also at the back, at the upper back, at the middle back. If we do notice that attention is drawn to thinking, see if we can regard that as normal. And once we recognize it as such, invite our attention to step back here and now to the present moment, to come back and reorientate itself to sensing. Notice what is happening here and now through our physical senses. Being aware of sounds, of different bodily sensations. How about bodily sensations at the abdomen? Not only sensations at the level of the skin or the muscles, but maybe we can also tune in and notice subtler sensations coming from within our own body. How about sensations further down at the pelvis? Are we able to notice sensations in the various powerful muscles at this part of the body, the different organs here? Maybe we notice the obvious, the weight of the pelvis resting, pressing down on our seat. And also, how about sensations coming through at both legs, starting from the hips, sensations at the upper legs, sensations at the knees, at the lower legs, and including both feet. Without effort on our part, simply invite these sensations from both legs to come fully into our awareness. Coming back to sensing, invite attention to find its way back to here and now, to the present moment. Be open and aware of the sounds, of bodily sensations, maybe of the different kind of feelings, pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, accompanying the sounds or bodily sensations. Investigate and find out for ourselves what might be the effects of such sensing, of resting our attention again and again in the present moment through our physical senses. Resting our attention, our awareness here and now. Maybe we become more aware when attention is drawn to thinking. Maybe the contrast between sensing and thinking becomes clearer to us in this meditation. See if we can investigate for ourselves, notice for ourselves the different effects of sensing and thinking on the functioning of our own body, our own mind. And see if we can invite our attention gently again and again to just come back to the present moment, to rest in sensing. Okay, so in terms of investigating, inquiring into our experiences, and to find out for ourselves what are helpful and what are not so helpful habits that we may have, habits or way of responding or reacting to situation. What we just did just now, which is almost like building a habit of inviting our attention to just come back to the present moment, to be in touch, mainly through our physical senses, to what's happening, to the sound in the surrounding, to the sensations in our own body, along with the different feelings that's happening, whether we're finding things to be quite pleasant, quite relaxing, or we may encounter unpleasant feelings. Just this habit of attention or sensing we can experiment with it, can be quite helpful because so often in our modern world, modern society, a lot of the distress, not only source, but a lot of it comes through thinking, comes through maybe certain form of compulsive, involuntary thinking. Not that we have much control over it, but we find our mind sort of being triggered and start to think in a certain way. A lot of this thinking is also very much affected by what's going on around us, especially what's coming through the information coming to us through news, through the media, different kind of platform now we have. All the stimulation of ideas and images and messages that's coming through quite often in an involuntary way. And a lot of those messages and ideas are, of course, designed to trigger some reaction in us. So it's almost like a double whammy. Not only do we get flooded by stimulations in terms of ideas, but also they are specifically designed to affect us in a certain way. And so we get very preoccupied with those ideas, those images, those messengers. We find ourselves quite often, for a lot of us, spend a lot of time, including myself, in thinking about that, whether I like it or not. I'm drawn into it. My attention is drawn to it. And that kind of compulsive, involuntary thinking, which is quite often reactive to certain things, has a certain effect on the physical body, on our emotions and feelings, on our mind. And if we are caught up in it for an extended period of time, we may find that no matter what it is we are reacting to, such sustained reactions is very stressful on our system. And it probably contribute to some of the unpleasant experiences that we may have. It raises our stress level, even our blood pressure maybe. And so in contrast to it, if we can consider the practice of returning our attention to sensing, and investigate from our own experience, that as we get good at staying with sensing, coming back to sensing, resting our attention, our awareness with sensing, just listening, nothing terribly difficult, listening to music if we want to, of course not music that stirs up more thoughts, okay? Listening to music, going for a walk in nature, just to have a different kind of stimulations, of our senses, physical senses, bodily experiences, and shifting the focus, the locus of our attention from thinking more the concepts, ideas, the memories, and fantasized images, shifting that to actual experiences through our physical senses. We can investigate, and you may find that there is a difference. Hopefully it's a helpful one, but that we have to decide for ourselves. Today, I want to continue with the investigation of reality, applying mindfulness, and a particularly powerful technique, not difficult to do, not complicated to explain, but it is actually difficult to pull it off as a way of investigating also In this case, investigating our thoughts, our thinking, especially when thoughts are sort of joined together, a whole entire train of thoughts, that actually form a story, a cohesive story. And our attention is very much absorbed in that story. Usually the story has something to do with me. Even though I might not be the main protagonist, nonetheless, the story is told from my perspective, from how I see things. So the story is, this kind of storytelling is inevitably self-focused, self-centered, right? And these are powerful way of thinking, self-centered thinking, very reactive, very powerful, and quite often they introduce an element of distortion into our understanding of reality. After all, we are seeing it from a very specific perspective, a self-centered perspective. And this tends to distort the situation. We might find it harder to be objective, to stand back, to see things in a less personal way. We tend to take things much more personal, and also we tend to react to it in a much more violent way. So it has great power to stir us up all sorts of emotions, all sorts of physical emotion, reactions. And so this way of investigating using mindfulness is to take a closer look at what are we telling ourselves. Sometimes this kind of rumination, so to speak, repetitive, compulsive, involuntary thinking is ongoing. There's a certain kind of compulsion to it, and sometimes can go on and on and on and on. Especially when may have all of us will have experience listening to another person, verbalizing out these thoughts because they are very distressed. They are in a reactive state. They need to vent what is going on in their own mind and heart. Their feelings, their thoughts. So basically, you get a glimpse, sometimes more than a glimpse, as we listen to maybe a friend, a family member venting. So what they say is most likely also what's going on inside their own mind. So we try to have a look at that. And inevitably you find that based on the narration, the thoughts are very much caught up in, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it is all from a certain perspective. And if you were to hear more of such a narration, you also find that it has a tendency to narrow down their attention. And hence, some people call this tunnel vision. And you can get very caught up in that tunnel, caught in the tunnel. And the tunnel, of course, offers us more and more limited options. In fact, eventually, when the tunnel is complete, there's only two options, right? It's either forward or backward, and that's it. We only see the world, the situation through the limitation of the tunnel. Tunnel vision is created through specific way of thinking and narrating, and that narration limits our vision, our perspective of what is actually happening and what is possible for the future, what sort of responses are available for us. So to detect tunnel vision within ourselves, to investigate what sort of tunnels we have trapped ourselves in. We need to investigate into the very brickwork of such tunnels, which is made up of primarily thoughts. With thoughts of memory, because past experiences definitely impact how we see things, how we understand things, interpret things. Could also be in the form of memories, also in the form of fantasies, because imagination play a part. When I got caught up in such reactive thinking, a lot of time I'm just making up scenarios, like an extrapolation of the current conflict into the future, and contemplating all those scenarios and getting worked up and upset about all those possible scenarios, which from experience, usually none of them come true. That I'm just getting upset about something that is completely a figment of my own imagination. Because when the actual situation happens, it always pan out very different from how I imagine it while I'm in my so-called tunnel vision. Yeah. Because the tunnel vision is a distortion. So it tends to not take into consideration many other factors influencing a situation. And so I only get a kind of truncated version, which I extrapolate. And so it is necessarily very far from reality. So this technique invites us to investigate the brickwork of our tunnels. What am I telling myself repeatedly that got me so caught up in this particular way of viewing things, this particular way of understanding myself and my situation, this particular view, so to speak? You know, what is it? You know? What are the storyline? What are the plot line? What are the characters? And in particular, what are the actual lines of the script that I'm sort of unconsciously following? And it always inevitably channel me down very familiar routes, familiar roads, familiar kind of reactions and feelings and behavior, almost to the point of it get really boring because I'm like caught in a kind of a Ferris wheel or merry-go-round, just going round and round and round, repeating past experiences again and again. Maybe in a relationship, at work, in very familiar scenarios, that seems to be repetitive in nature. It seems to lack a kind of creativity. And instead of actually solving the problem, seems to compound the problem, seems to aggravate the situations. And I might find myself, not only am I reacting, but I'm actually reacting more and more violently, and also the threshold of the trigger seems to get lower and lower, easier and easier. Am I triggered in that way and reacting in more and more strongly in that way? And well, if it helps the situation, that would be actually be wonderful. But most of the time, it doesn't. It's almost only make things worse for myself. So that might be incentive for us to apply a technique like this to investigate the very brickwork of my own tunnel. You may not call it a tunnel, but after you practice with it for a while, you really can. In my experience, I would say it is a tunnel because it's so narrow, it's so kind of constricted and so distorted, so to speak. Distorted in a way that make me, the self, at the center of the universe. It's sometimes even hard to think what is going on in, let's say there's two people involved in this conflict or situations. It's even hard to put myself in another person's shoe, to try to consider where the person is coming from. I find it very difficult because I'm reacting so strongly from my own point of view, what I would do and what I must do, I should do, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So let me just explain this meditative technique, and maybe we can give it a try. Usually, in situation like this, you will not really see the power of this technique because at the moment, especially we are in a meditative state, nothing is triggering us. So we don't get to witness the full force of our reactions in the meditation and to apply this technique to that situation. The technique involves just like sensing and thinking, but here primarily focus on thinking and not just labeling it as thinking in such a more very general, vague way. Instead, invite us to pay even closer attention to the kinds of thoughts that is arising within our mind, that is capturing our attention. And it invite us the moment we recognize, oh, I'm thinking, that's a thought, to not just label it as thinking, but instead to echo what exactly is that thought about. What was I thinking just one moment ago? What was the thing that is preoccupying my attention? And to look back very briefly and to see if I can repeat that thought, to echo it. Almost like I say something and then one moment later I can hear the echo coming back. A little bit change, a little bit flattened maybe in terms of the tone, but nonetheless the same words come back to me. Same. Now we echo ourselves. One moment the mind might be saying, "Oh, Wai Chong, you're such a stupid fella," and noticing that as a thought, I need to, according to this technique, say, "Oh, having a thought, Wai Chong, you're such a stupid fella." Just like that, once. Just echo the different thoughts that surface in our mind, that capture our attention, and with each one, try to repeat it just once, but try to repeat it as precise as possible. Capture the actual words that use, or if it's in the form of image, to be able to describe the image or identify the image, even briefly, and try to do it without the charge that comes with the original thought. The original thought is quite often sometimes charged with emotions, and now we try to be more objective with ourselves and say, "Oh, having a thought, I'm so stupid, I'm so useless," right? But to say in a very matter-of-fact way, without the emotional charge, so that we can really see the thought for what it is, minus the emotional reaction goes with it, but just to see what exactly am I telling myself? What are the words I use to relate this story? What is that story all about? What am I actually telling myself? It's almost like reading the lines of a script, but in a very flat, neutral tone, so that we can reveal and see clearly what are we doing to ourselves, so to speak. Yeah, a very difficult technique, because it might not sound like that when I describe it, but when we actually do it, we will come face to face with a very deep-seated, spontaneous resistance to doing it. Because what we are doing with these techniques, we are breaking apart the tunnel. We are putting wedges in between the brickwork. Here there's one thought, and then we insert in this requirement to echo that thought. So it sort of block it from flowing smoothly into the next one, into the next one, into the next one. So I'm inserting such wedges in between the thoughts. And each time I interrupt it in this way, it gets a bit weaker. And instinctively, the mechanism within our own mind that trigger all this, that bring forward this, knows that this is the way to its demise. Yeah. It is. We are breaking apart the habit. We are weakening the habit. So we will find resistance to this technique will arise in different form. Yeah. But that's something we have to discover for ourselves. But so the mechanism of this method is to really see the thought for what it is. What is this thought? What is this story that I'm telling about myself? So in fact, if we get really good at it, we become so familiar with all these different stories. You can call them stories because they are like a kind of like a drama, so to speak. They're actually a kind of a drama where we ourselves is the center, of course, of that drama. It somehow spiral around us. Whether we are involved or not, it's nonetheless still spiral around us as the center of the universe. And sometimes we get so familiar with the script, so to speak, after we do this technique, that we even catch the very opening line of this particular drama. It's almost like a fairy tale start with once upon a time. We can hear the first line pop into our head, and we say, "Oh, here we go again. We're going down familiar routes, following very familiar pattern of thinking, of reacting." And we are maybe the actual triggering situation may differ, but the patterns of reaction is very familiar, and we are just adapting the same pattern to the different scenarios, the different situations that is triggering this way of thinking. So that is the technique for investigation, and maybe we can just do a very short meditation on this. I don't require people to deliberately trigger themselves and bring up strong, difficult situation to consider, but just in case they do arise. So here, I'm just asking you, focusing mainly on thinking, especially involuntary thinking. So we may be attending to the breath, and then we recognize that, oh, my attention is involved in thinking. And to take another look at that thought before it sort of disappear from our mind, and see if we can, to our best of ability, echo the thought, repeat the thought to ourselves. Maybe go to prefix it with having a thought, or I'm thinking, and then repeat as close as possible, verbatim, to the words, the choice of words we use, so that we can hear it and we can see clearly what exactly am I thinking? What exactly am I telling myself? What exactly am I relating here through these thoughts? So initially in this practice, the thoughts will be more random, usually not terribly emotional. Just random thoughts that pop into our mind. No problem. When we are aware of it, see if we can do our best to echo it. If there are too many thoughts in between before we recognize what is happening, then we can just summarize, just give a very brief summary of what all those thoughts that just have arisen just now. Yeah. But as much as possible, try to catch single thoughts and try to echo it. Yeah. And then we see what happened and find out for ourselves what sort of impact such a technique may have on our own experience. Okay, so let's do a meditation together. Just as before, take a few moments, just settle back in a meditation posture. We're not going to do it for long, maybe 15 minutes. So just be comfortable. Let me just ring this bell. Making sure that our body is as comfortable as it can be in our chosen posture. Just allow the body to once again settle back into meditation. Might be good to start with relaxing the muscles of our face, welcoming back the same feeling of softness, of ease and comfort. And think that we allow that softening, the easing up of tension to spread from face to the rest of the body. So much so that given time, our body can loosen up even further, unwind, and really be comfortable in the meditation posture. Just as earlier on, we make sensing the support for our attention, we can also do it here. Rest our attention here and now with sounds, with bodily sensations, with breath sensations, with sensing through our physical senses. This becomes the home base of our attention, the resting place where we invite our attention to come back to again and again, gently. If that is a bit difficult, then we can simply make use of the breath and just invite our attention to come back to the breath sensations. Either way is perfectly fine. Both are sensing, both are related to be present in this moment, here and now. Resting our attention here and now with the sensing, with the breath, inevitably, sooner or later, and we don't have to look up for it, we will come to recognize on occasions that our attention is drawn to thinking. When that happens, important not to view it as something is wrong with our meditation or we have somehow failed to concentrate. Just think of it as a very normal occurrence. This is what our mind will do the mind tends to wander off. And when we notice the mind, attention is involved in thinking, see if we can take another look at the thought, recognize it as such, and repeat it to ourselves. Having a thought off, and see if we can repeat the thought as closely as possible. And then letting it go, we come back here now, come back to sensing, come back to the sounds, come back to our own body, come back to our own breath, and continue with the meditation. Coming back to sensing, to here and now, be with the breath, with our physical senses. Quite often when we start this meditation, we are a little bit hyper vigilant. We're on the lookout for thoughts, and thinking becomes very shy and refuse to make an appearance. Simply rest our attention here and now, maybe with the breath, breathing out, deepen the sense of release, relax our attention into this moment. And in time, thoughts will arise all by themselves. When we do notice, recognize thought as thoughts, and in our own way, see if we can repeat it, echo it just once, help us see clearly what is that thought about, and then we can always come back to the breath, to the sounds, to the other bodily sensations. Coming back to the present moment, resting our attention here and now with physical senses, with sounds, with bodily sensations, with the breath. See if we can recognize thoughts as thoughts, echo its content. If the thought appear in the form of visual images, do our best to give a brief description of it as a way of acknowledging it, helping us to see it for what it is. And then, as always, come back to here and now. resting our attention here and now, becoming aware when the attention is drawn to thinking, recognize the thought as a thought. If thoughts arise quickly in quick succession, simply summarize them to the best of your ability. And when no thought is in sight, see if we can relax ourselves and just settle back into the present moment. Be comfortable with sounds, with breath, with bodily sensations, and continue with the meditation. So coming back to be in touch with what's happening here and now, notice whether are we tensing up some of the muscles in the body in reaction to this meditation? Are we tightening up some of the muscles in the face, so much so that the face no longer feels soft, relaxed, at ease? If we notice bodily tension increasing as a result of meditation, see if we can invite our attention to come back, reconnect with the body, and persuade the body that you can release. Release the tension in the face, allow the whole face to soften, to be at ease. The method really does not require us to put in such extra effort. We simply just notice when we can, recognizing thinking as thinking, and do our best to echo it and see what happens. Coming back to sensing, if we do notice some of the thoughts and able to echo them, see if we can also notice, is there any connection between thinking and the body, how the body reacts to those thinking, and whether are we actually in touch with our body when our attention is caught up in reactive thinking. So all I find myself labeling is what I'm about to say next, what I'm about to sing next in the guided meditation. Because of course that is my primary concern during the meditation. And so it's natural for thoughts to continuously arise, offering suggestions to what to say next. Yeah. And that is a very typical scenario. Depending on what has been triggered, what is happening in our life, we find that our thoughts, especially the thinking, repeatedly go back to areas of concern. I just thought to maybe elaborate a little bit on possible observations of this technique and some of the implication of it. Yeah. When we just, it's good to do this technique with a playful attitude. Don't take it too seriously, because otherwise the technique itself have imposed a lot of stress on ourselves. Like for example, I was saying at the beginning, because if we are too hyper vigilant, you try too hard, no thought will arise, because the way we apply the technique more or less exclude those thinking from arising. So we need to be quite a bit relaxed and not to take it too seriously, have a more playful attitude, just almost like a curiosity. Then you'll find that when we are sufficiently settled, inevitably, those involuntary, reactive, compulsive thinking will begin by themselves. And so we will have something to work with anyway. And hopefully with this, when we apply, we come to see how closely connected body and mind, and everything else. This is one whole system. We are a system composed of all these different processes that are intertwined and mutually dependent and affecting one another. So much so that what we think has an impact on the body itself, and also on our perception. So perception, feeling, thinking, reactions, behavior, choices, and then it starts again over again. All of these are all entwined and affecting one another. And you can see, actually it's easier to see others when they are in this state of what I call tunnel vision. They are so caught up in certain idea, certain experience, certain way of thinking or opinion or view, so to speak. Because this is also related to the deeply cherished view, opinion, or belief. There's a connection there. The tunnel can also be viewed as a particular view, particular opinion or belief. So much so that people have selective perceptions. They only see certain things, they only hear certain things. They are not able to accept anything contradictory to it. The famous confirmation bias, according to psychologists. And because of that, the tunnel becomes even more solid because it sort of has a self-reinforcing, self-protective mechanism that excludes anything that is contradictory to it, and so on and so forth. And it's not a very benign process because it's sort of self-enclosed, self-perpetuating. And also it triggers certain, precisely because it affects how we see things, how we think about things, interpret things. It also affects how we feel about things, the feelings that triggered, and the kind of emotional reactions that may be brought forth, which affect, of course, our behavior. And as we behave in a certain way, as we react in a certain way, it feedback into our perceptions, our thinking and feeling. And so the cycle perpetuates itself. And it almost becomes our reality, so to speak, the reality that is confined within our tunnel visions. We can't see anything else. We can't. We are simply not able to perceive something different, and this can become. It's really a trap, so to speak. Although it's probably the mechanism is not intended to trap us, but inevitably. Often we find ourselves fallen into this kind of traps, and it is repetitive. So it stops for a while, especially even if we manage to interrupt it. It will come back, it starts again. It will come back, it starts again. It's repetitive, and also it becomes a kind of pattern that we apply. This pattern is triggered in very similar scenarios and situations. So of course the details may differ, but nonetheless there is a kind of pattern that we can come to recognize. And so what it does is it greatly limit our experience, limit our responses, and also limit our way of limit the possibility for our life, because we constantly find ourselves get stuck and trapped within such tunnels. And we have more than one tunnel, most of us. And when we apply this technique, hopefully we get acquainted with our own tunnels. We say, oh dear, here I'm again, same old tunnel, all so familiar, and yet I'm still back here. And the more skillful we are at applying the tunnel, and sometimes, especially when we try to meditate, in the midst of an emotional reactive storm, the thoughts and the feelings are raging, and here you're trying to label them in a more dispassionate, more neutral tone. It's almost like, first of all, the thoughts come thick and fast. It's hard to catch each one of them individually. And then also, it's almost all this feeble labeling and noticing is no effect. One thought arises, we label, we notice it, and immediately the next one continue. It has a tremendous momentum to continue in its own path. In spite of all our attempt to be mindful. But over a period of time, with familiarity, with practice, I have sat through many of this emotional storm on my own. Blah, 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 blah. And as and when I can, I remember, I try to label, I try to notice this is a thought, blah, 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 this is another thought. I can really become familiar with the outline, even the plot line of my own stories, my reactive stories. And more than one occasions, if I'm patient enough, if this opportunity is available, it is possible through applying this technique and notice that the storm, the whirlwind of thoughts seems to be slowing down and slowing down. Something is happening. It is losing steam, so to speak, because attention, the energy of my attention is now divided. Not all of the energy of my attention is caught up in the tunnel, in maintaining a tunnel, in the whirlwind of thoughts and feelings and reactions. A lot of those energy of attention is diverted to mindfulness, diverted to investigation, diverted to noticing, what am I doing to myself? What on earth is my mind thinking and reacting? What is it telling itself? That attention of mindfulness is drawing the energy away from this whirlwind, drawing the energy away from such tunnel vision. And a critical point is reached where just a bit too much energy has been dissipated from these reactions. It cannot maintain itself. It starts to fall apart, and it can fall apart very quickly. One moment you're thick and inside the tunnel reacting, have all these feelings, or this furious. The next moment, it's all the brickwork starts to fall apart, and it's amazing when we emerge from our own tunnel. When we saw this big gap between the bricks, and you say, "Wow, there's a big hole. Let me step outside." You step outside, and suddenly the scenario change. Even the air, the atmosphere seems to breathe differently, feel differently. You say, "Wow, the view here is much more spectacular. It's so different. It feels so different." And my thought, my brain seems to be more creative, more active. Oh, why do I only stuck with this two solution? I have so many possibilities. I can try, I can explore. Why am I so worked up about such a tiny little thing? Because there is a shift in perspective. When the tunnel collapses, we shift out of the limited perspective dictated by the tunnel, by those thoughts, the reactive thoughts, and we emerge in a different space, and we acquire a completely different perspective, and we suddenly say, "Oh, well, I see things differently, I think differently, I feel differently. Of course, I'm going to act differently. I'm going to behave differently." And the more time we experience this contrast between living inside life in the tunnel and life out in open space, the two different perspectives, we can start to see for ourselves which one is more conducive to my own genuine happiness, and which one is actually compounding my suffering. So I think this is one of the great benefits of such a technique of investigation with the help of mindfulness, investigating our own stories, our own narrative, and to create a possibility for us to step out into a new perspective. Maybe not new, but nonetheless very different. And then suddenly we are once again being creative again. Once again, we are able to assess the situation differently. We are able to come up with far more effective way of dealing with the situation, and not so caught up in all those emotions and all those limited views represented by this tunnel. So that is what I view as a great benefit. Right? So enough of me talking this evening. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you give this method a try now and then, even not necessarily even in a formal meditation. Now and then when you do remember, just give it a try one or twice, one or two thoughts. It's good to start. And as we become familiar with it, as we strengthen, in fact, the mindfulness of thinking in this way, we really have a very valuable technique with us to help us work with these reactions. Okay, have a good week ahead and hope to see you next week. Take care. Good night.